everybody, my name's Halle Huber, and I am the social media coordinator at UAH's I2C Invention to Innovation Center. This is our very first episode of Women in Tech's newest podcast called A Girl's Guide to STEAM. We're currently in the Spark Studio, which is one of the many innovative aspects of the I2C, filled with state-of-the-art podcasting technology. We are currently here with Professor Amy Guerin. Professor Guerin is an associate theater professor at UAH and also one of UAH's Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies coordinator. We're going to be talking about the amazing projects that Professor Guerin has been a part of, incorporating technology into the artistic realm of theater. She'll also provide us some key advice and some steps to take your career into the path of STEAM in theater. Let's dive in full steam ahead. Okay. Well, hello, Professor Guerin. How are you?
I'm great, Halle. Thanks so much for having me.
We're so excited that you're here.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. Okay. So why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, just in regards to, your general career and being a faculty member at UAH in theater?
Sure. I am an associate professor of theater here at UAH. I've been at UAH since 2016, and
Wow.
Just this past school year was named program coordinator for our Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies program.
Round of applause.
Thank you. Before I taught at UAH, I was at Texas A&M University for 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Where I was an instructional assistant professor there and got to really dive into some really interesting STEAM projects with their Department of Performance Studies.
Yeah, I was actually meaning to ask you about that, about your experience in, I saw on your bio at UAH that you did teach at Texas A&M, and that you had a certain special project that involved, I believe it was flying fairy robots?
Yes.
Oh
so
my gosh.
In 2009, I directed a production of William Shakespeare's comedy A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's the one with the fairies.
Oh, yes.
And it included flying fairy robots as a part of the production in collaboration with the computer and electrical engineering? Yeah, the computer and electrical engineering department at Texas A&M.
Awesome. Well, tell me more about that. You said flying fairy robots. Is it like drones or?
It is drones. It was drones. In 2009, we were working with Dr. Robin Murphy, who is a specialist in rescue robotics.
Oh, wow.
And she was working on a project with her graduate students and her doctoral students that involved understanding how humans can trust rescue robots who might come to them in a crisis, right? If you are in an earthquake and you're trapped under rubble, if you see lights coming to you from the darkness and a robot says, "Come with me if you want to live," how do you say yes to that? Or, what makes you say, "No, thank you, I'm just going to stay here and wait for the people." And so Dr. Robin Murphy contacted the Department of Performance Studies and asked about a potential collaboration. She has these graduate and doctoral students, and they need to explore kind of working with people in different kinds of situations, and they need to gather data on the idea of trust in rescue robotics, and could there be a collaboration possible? And my department chair at the time, Dr. Judith Hamera, thought that was a fantastic idea, and so we had lunch with Robin, and we were talking about different ideas and different kinds of things that we could do to incorporate her robotics with our performance studies, our theater productions, and I already knew in spring of 2009 that I would be directing A Midsummer Night's Dream in the fall, and so. As a joke, I said, well, I'm directing Midsummer Night's Dream. Maybe we could have, flying fairy robots. And Dr. Murphy, incredibly straight-faced, said, yeah, we can do that. And so then I was directing a version of A Midsummer Night's Dream that included flying fairy robots.
Oh my gosh. Did you ever expect that joke would come to life?
I really didn't. I really was just making a joke, and what Robin was able to do with her fellow faculty members, with her graduate and doctoral students, with the resources that we were able to provide, was to give us a production that no one had ever seen before, that, we were able to write lots of articles on, to get published. Wired did a story, NPR Science Friday did a story, Smithsonian Magazine, NBC News, suddenly this podcast, right? Suddenly, the idea of incorporating robotics into a production just took off and took my career in a totally unexpected direction. And so from then on, I've been seeking out opportunities to incorporate technology into the theater productions that I do, and I've been able to do that both at Texas A&M and here at UAH.
That's so awesome! How that one specific moment became a huge turning point for you in your career.
It changed the whole trajectory of my career. Yeah,
that is so exciting.
Yeah.
So let's see. Did the robots? Did they kind of act too, or was it just there for an extra effect? Did they emote?
That was the challenge. Is what we didn't want to do was wait until the very end of the rehearsal process to include the robots.
Right.
What we wanted to do was try to find a way to make the robots a cohesive part of the story, and so that included involving Robin and her collaborators and the robots and her students really from the get-go in terms of planning the production. And what we discovered was that she had a set of small kind of mini helicopter robots. Kind of a small, like a rotator wing robots, and those would be kind of our main fairy core. Ooh. And we kind of established a mythology within the show that that these were like the baby fairies, right? These little flying, and that they would grow up into people, right? They would grow up into beings.
Oh my goodness!
And we needed a way to connect the copter robots with the human actors, and so our costume designer and lighting designer, Professor Autumn Casey, worked, experimented, tested, developed, researched all the things that scientists do to find a way to essentially costume the flying fairy robots in a way that could work, in a way that could connect them to their human actor, but also not make them so heavy that they couldn't fly.
Right.
And so what she discovered was colored cellophane in a kind of a strip that could snap around the drone, and so the light that the copter drone had would illuminate the cellophane, and so we could see that there was a yellow flying robot, there was an orange, blue, green, and then the actors themselves, the actors who played the fairies, their costumes had LED or bioluminescent, right? They had those elements built into their costumes, and so it was really easy to connect the actors to their robots and to make that visually clear. And we assigned robots to the actors, like, okay, hey, your costume is green. This is your green robot, right? This is your robot. Look after your robot. Take care of your robot.
It's your little pet.
It's your pet. And the actors got some training on how to interact with the copter robots that we had, right? How to let them, how to pick them up gently, how to let them launch, right? They'd hold their palm flat. Like if you can imagine feeding a horse, right? They'd hold their palm flat so that the copter could take off, and the pilot flyers would have their own rehearsal before we had performance rehearsal. And so they were always in the space. They were always a part of the rehearsal process so that they could make sure it's a line of sight technology. It was in 2009. Right. So that they could see their robot, that their robot wasn't going to fly into a person, into a part of the set. They could avoid the AC, they could avoid the air conditioning units, they could avoid the lights. And so that became the story that we told. And in order to make it so that we didn't surprise the audience with the robots partway through, once we meet the fairies, we actually staged an opening, what we called it the prologue. And it was kind of like the dance lines you would see on Soul Train, right? Where the fairies would dance kind of down the line, and their robots would be with them. And so we from the get-go built a world where the fairies existed alongside their flying robot counterparts.
Yeah.
And so we were able to create a cohesive story. And so what the drones were able to do and what the Robin students were able to do through their own experimentation is give the robots an appearance of active participation in the story and in a sense of character, a sense of emotion that they were portraying.
Yeah.
They realized that kind of a slow bounce in the air was seemed like a laugh. And a faster bounce was an even more kind of a, like really, laughing till you cry kind of a laugh.
I see.
They realized that if you were flying the drone and if you tilted its nose down so that the wings were pointed kind of directly, at someone, that was kind of a very aggressive kind of posture for the drone to take. And so they found ways to make it so that the robots weren't just decoration, but were actively participating in the story as characters with minds of their own.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so cool that they can like emote and stuff too. It's like their own little cute little characters that are like little fairy pets. Oh my goodness.
And of course, I haven't mentioned Virginia.
Oh yes, I was actually about to ask something about that, if they were the only robots.
They weren't the only robots. We also had a robot that Dr. Murphy and her team named Virginia. And Virginia was a quad rotor robot, and so was about the size of an extra large pizza.
Oh my gosh.
Virginia was called the weed whacker of death.
Oh my God, please tell me more about that.
Because what you didn't want to do was you didn't want to underestimate Virginia. You didn't want to kind of walk into Virginia's rotor blades.
Yeah.
Because that would really, really hurt. And so we had to train the actors, because the actors got fairly comfortable and casual with their mini copters.
Yeah.
But they got inappropriately casual with Virginia, kind of really coming close to the rotors. And so we had to have a small kind of safety briefing where it was like, hey, like you can, this is a very serious, heavy drone. And so you don't walk into the rotors, friends, right? Give Virginia some distance. And our plan with Virginia was to have Virginia be Oberon, the Fairy King, to be Oberon's robot. And so was always present when Oberon was on stage, kind of hovering over the action. And Virginia looked a lot like she was costumed to look a lot like a jellyfish. And so again, kind of that organic, the organic kind of piece of making it look like a part of the world. And the first time Virginia came to rehearsal, we were so excited, right? And Oberon entered and Virginia entered and the actor playing Oberon started speaking and we realized that we could not hear a word that Oberon was saying.
No.
Yeah, Virginia was too loud.
Oh no! Now Oberon is the Fairy King. Okay, got you. So the biggest robot for the Fairy King.
And so it was really disappointing to realize that there was no way for the actor to be louder than the robot within the space. And so
sad.
it was very sad. And so Virginia made an entrance during the prologue, and Virginia made an entrance with Oberon, and then Oberon, kind of made a gesture to, send Virginia away.
No.
And then we saw Virginia again at the end of the play as the fairies are kind of wrapping up the story.
Yeah.
Shakespeare wrote in a song and dance number for the fairies at the very end of the play, and so we saw Virginia then, and then we saw Virginia at the curtain call. So Virginia was not cut entirely, but Virginia had less stage time than some of the other fairy robots that we had in the show.
What's very special appearances?
Yes.
A very special fairy robot with very special fairy appearances.
Yes.
So tell me more about the theatrical process of trying to plan out, the rehearsals and all that sort of stuff. You said that they were there from the very beginning. So were they in I know that in a usual theater process that it's kind of early on planning of how are we going to communicate the story with the director and the technical director as well. So please tell me a little bit more about that.
So we had months of pre-production meetings where we worked out, not only the story, but the kind of the cohesive, nature of the play in terms of incorporating the robots and what the fairy costumes look like. The fairy costumes, we decided that the fairies were immortal and they'd seen a lot of things, and so they'd acquired things over time to make, so that their costumes had found objects on them or incorporated light. And so so we got a lot of different kinds of fairy costumes. We didn't kind of go the traditional like Tinkerbell route.
Right.
We went a different route in terms of the use of color and the use of costume that incorporated the LED lights. And then it was a matter of finding one of the faculty members in performance studies, Dr. Jeff Morris, composed music that kind of went along with the fairies as kind of a fairy theme. And so when we'd see them, we'd see the robots. And so the production meetings were very familiar to the theater side of the team, because we're used to weekly production meetings and collaborating and sharing information and, working through issues together. But that was something new for Dr. Murphy and her team. They just weren't used to weekly meetings on the topic.
Right.
And so, it wasn't a point of tension. It was just something new that they didn't expect as a part of the process.
Right.
But incorporating them in from the beginning, and having, Robin had the idea to have the flyers have rehearsal before the performance rehearsal started, and then stay for the performance rehearsal, meant that that everything was as cohesive as possible.
Right.
Because part of what they were testing was not only how do the robots interact in space, but how does the audience interact with the robots? Because if the idea of rescue robotics is how do you trust the robot when it says, "Come with me if you want to live?"
Right.
Then what does the audience do when they encounter the robot? Do they treat it as an inanimate object, or do they treat it as an animate prop? Do they treat it as a thing with will?
Right.
And so what we saw, the audience was our guinea pigs, and so what we saw in essentially recordings of the production, where we were also recording the audience, is that there really wasn't any place in the theater where you could sit where you didn't have the chance of a little mini copter robot crash landing into you.
Oh no!
That happened it happened every night. It happened multiple times. And we just had to kind of get used
go with the flow.
We just had to get used to the fact that was happening, that it was never going to be perfect.
Right.
And so what we saw over the course of analyzing the data is that if the audience member had the chance to see an actor interact with the robot ahead of time, they would mimic the actor's actions. Right. They would treat the robot gently. They knew to hold their palm out so it could launch out. If they didn't have the chance to see the actor interact with the robot, they would just treat it like a toy, and so they would kind of toss it back into the air, or they'd kind of scooch it off their lap. Right,
get away from me, like a little bug or something.
Yeah, and so we learned within just the first couple of performances that if it was really early on in the process, that the actors needed to go into the audience to get the robot from the audience member. And so we would do that, so that, the actor could come and, get the robot, right? Take the robot from the audience member, who was absolutely willing to give it up. There were never any struggles over, give me the robot. No, I'm taking the robot. No, it's my robot.
Good.
But then the actors, would scoop up the robot, and they might, pet it and calm it down, or they might kind of scold it like, hey, you know better than that, right? To crash into the audience member.
Like a little pet.
Right, like a little pet. And
That's so cute.
And so that was part of the research that was gathered, the data that was gathered was how are, even in just this basic situation, how are people reacting to these robots? How are they treating them? How are they interacting with them? Because that really is the central question in rescue robotics, is how do you instantly generate that trust in terms of the size of the robot, its color, its lighting, the sound of the sound that it might be making, whether it's a vocal noise or a nonverbal noise. How do we generate that quickly when time is of the essence, right? When it's truly life and death, how do we make it so that that the robot is there to help?
I see. So basically, audience members kind of mimicked the actors in a way. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was really cool.
Yeah.
To see the change happen, because it depending on when the crashes happened, audience members would change their behavior over the course of the show. And so you'd see at the start kind of this rough treatment of the robots, but then as the show went on, if there, as there were still crashes that happened, the audience behavior would change, and it would get more gentle, it would get more intentional with the robots.
That is so cool. I love that. So let's see. So was there any articles that were published? I believe you mentioned something about that.
We did publish multiple articles as a whole group. We published a scientific article in autonomous robots, which was I was super excited by that. I published my own sole authored article in an online journal that's no longer in existence, but it was called the Dramaturgy Protocol, and it was about the production process and really kind of understanding how this worked and how this folded in. But then news outlets kind of found out, and this is 2009. This is before social media.
Yeah.
And so news outlets somehow gathered. I still am not quite sure how they gathered, but somehow they gathered that this production was happening. And so our second weekend, or the show ran for 2 weekends. Our second weekend, Wired magazine already had an article.
Oh, wow!
About the production, and that led to NPR Science Friday. Kind of did a feature on it. I think that next week, and then a little while later, Smithsonian Magazine and NBC News reached out for interviews to talk about the production, because when you Google theater and robots, there really aren't that many productions out there.
Right.
We're still one of the only productions that incorporates truly mechanical robots. There's plays out in the world that have mechanical characters in them, but they're played by humans. When you look up theater with truly mechanical performers in them, there's ours. There's a couple in Japan.
Oh, wow.
There might be one or two in Europe, but there's really not a lot. And so we still every once in a while get media requests about this show that happened 15 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Something like that.
Yeah, close enough. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So again, you were saying that it kind of would land on the character's hand, and then the person at the back that would be controlling it would help it launch.
Yeah. Because the pilots were always in the theater space. They would sit behind the audience, or they would stand behind the audience for the whole show, and they could see, and so they could launch their robot back into the air. Yeah.
Oh,
and then the robots, when they were done with their scene, they would fly back to their pilot and wait until their next scene. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so the pilots were always in view of the audience. Yeah. They were dressed in black, but they were always in view of the audience. And at a certain point you kind of fade into the background. And so you didn't when you look at the production pictures, you can see them in the production photos.
We'll try to link some photos.
But really only if you're looking for them can you see this line of people standing on, house left and house right. And that's who that is. Those are the pilots.
Wow. So, basically the aftermath of the production, just still a lot of...
Yeah, really positive.
Well, that's so great.
Yeah,
audience reactions,
the audience reaction was great. Yeah, we sold out our second weekend. And, it I think partly on kind of the interest of like, wait a minute, it's got robots in it?
Right,
Like, it's got what?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, robots?
Yeah, so all of our, we made T-shirts, and they all had flying fairy robots right on the back of the shirt.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Because there's a couple of different, essentially, groups of characters within A Midsummer Night's Dream, and so each group of characters had their own shirt and their own color, and on the back it had the show information. It included "with flying fairy robots!" !
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, let's dive into something kind of similar. You were mentioning that theater, I believe you mentioned to me earlier that theater can be used to improve the engineering process. Would you mind telling me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of the research projects that I got involved here at UAH is with Dr. Brian Mesmer, who's in the Industrial and Systems Engineering Department.
Okay.
And he was really interested in using theater to help improve engineering process and engineering culture. And one of the projects that we've worked on together over the course of our years of collaboration was in collaboration with Dr. Kristen Vager in psychology, and it was the idea of using improvisational theater, especially to make positive organizational culture change at NASA.
Oh.
How can we use improvisational theater to make culture changes at NASA?
Yeah.
In kind of reading the research and understanding the problems, right? There's, sometimes there are specific kind of cultural issues at NASA in terms of, projects getting funded or projects getting rushed to deadline, or, what do you do with, staffers who are more senior and staffers who are more junior? How do we bridge that gap?
Yeah.
And so one of our research projects was on using improvisational theater. We used a very specific methodology from the practitioner Augusto Boal, who is from Brazil. He died earlier in the 21st century, but he developed a kind of theater that empowers communities to discover solutions for themselves for how to solve problems that they might be facing without necessarily having to rely on the state to fix problems for them.
Okay.
And so, he's coming from a time when, South America at that time in the 70s and 80s, when he was really flourishing in his career, a lot of military dictatorships, and the state wasn't always necessarily serving all of its citizens. And Boal wanted to empower communities to solve problems for themselves, and so his technique brings the theater to the community. That it could be a street corner, a market square. He staged, plays inside restaurants, right?
Oh, wow.
Kind of wherever the people are, and it's about that community. It's about solving a problem. And he always had a character in his plays that he called the Joker. It's kind of a throwback to the trickster character in Native American and Latin American mythologies that would interact with the audience and bring them into the story and, comment on the story and connect to the audience. And Boal called his audience, he didn't call them spectators, he called them spect-actors.
Oh, so it created audience engagement and they could kind of
respond. Exactly.
Okay,
so in a Boal play, you'd get to a point where there would need to be a solution to the problem. And that's when the Joker would reach out to the audience and say, well, who knows how to solve this problem? And ideally, you get, multiple people saying, well, I know how to solve it. Well, hey, come up and show us, right?
Yeah.
Come up and show us the solution. And the professional actors and the spect actor who joined them on stage would enact a potential solution together.
Oh, so how did that translate into...
So the thought was that we could stage similar scenarios centered on, different aspects of NASA culture that we could then, engage NASA employees and say, okay, now we've reached the, what's the solution? Hey, NASA employees, do you have an idea? And so we had kind of the idea of, performing this live at, different NASA centers, at conferences, right, kind of around the country, and we had funding and we had a plan and we were ready to go. And it was, January 2020.
Oh, no.
And so what happened is that we, at a certain point in the late spring, we started to pivot to thinking about, how do we gather online, the professional actors, me, my undergraduate research assistant at the time, Rebecca Westbrook. How do we gather online? How do we do this work together? And we figured that out still in the mindset of, but by later this fall we'll be in person and we'll go to these things. And so, of course, as it turned out, we never got to be in person.
No.
And what we discovered was that trying to do BOAL theater specifically online and using the Microsoft Teams platform, which is what NASA uses, it really just is not possible.
Right.
BOAL's technique relies so much on audience interaction that to have people with their cameras off or people with their audio muted doesn't create the same kind of participatory permission that being in person and interacting in person allows. And so we ultimately weren't really able to answer this research question.
Oh, I see.
Because it's one that has to be answered in person. And so we discovered some really interesting things.
Oh,
right?
do tell.
We discovered that that trying to shoehorn BOAL into an online format just doesn't really work. And so trying to kind of make the cultural changes that we were interested in making, or discovering how that the culture needed to be changed, we just weren't able to do that. It just wasn't possible using the online resources that we had. And so the research question still remains. The next step is to return to that in-person format that allows us to really interact with people on an interpersonal basis to see how those connections could get made and how those solutions can come from within the community itself. So I see that, and I wrote about this in an article that got published in a performance studies journal called Etudes as not a failed experiment, but simply an experiment on pause.
Right, yeah. So are you interested in trying to get back and do
that
again?
Yeah. So that's, I think that's a next step in, like next steps of, grant funding if the project goes forward, it'll really be about being back in person.
Oh, I see. Well, best of luck.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So let's see. Well, now that you're in Huntsville, I'm sure that, your experience with theater and STEM kind of go hand in hand very well since, since the Huntsville area is very much techie and STEM related. Have you had any other experiences with the combination of theater and STEM? I know you were mentioning about the NASA.
Yeah. So there have been a couple of different research projects with Dr. Mesmer and Dr. Vager, that talking about constructing autonomous systems for warfighting. How do we build a trustworthy, ethical, battle-ready robot? That was a really interesting conversation from last spring, involving people from across the university, folks from the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences, folks from the College of Science. We had folks from the College of Nursing participate in this conversation. That was really, really interesting. But in terms of theater production, I have worked with Dr. Vinny Argentina in art and art design to create video game animation. I directed a play in 2018 called Neighborhood 3 Requisition of Doom. And this is a play about a zombie video game that comes to life.
Oh, wow.
Which was very exciting. It was so fun. We had a great turnout, great participation in the production. But video games, frequently folks will do walkthroughs. Well, they'll video themselves playing the game, and so you can kind of see all the different aspects of the game if you need kind of a help in completing different aspects of the game. And part of how in this play we move from scene to scene is through a walkthrough video. And so Professor Argentina worked with his students to create a walkthrough video of the video game. And so we see houses and neighborhoods, and we see streets, and we see maps, and and all of this was projected on the back screen of the theater in the scene transitions, so you could walk through the game as the characters are playing it, right? As things are happening in the game and tension is building, you're seeing what the characters in the play are seeing as the worlds are starting to, blend together and kind of really rip into one another. And so that was a really fun production and really interesting. During COVID, we had to find a way to continue to provide theater training for our students, even during lockdown. And so we, along with practically every theater program in the country at that time, in fall 2020 and spring 2021, did shows online. And that was a really interesting experience because no one had ever done that before.
Right.
Ever.
Yeah.
And suddenly we have to figure out how to make this work. And we're using Zoom Webinar, which is an incredibly robust video conference platform. It is not designed for theater production.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's great for what it does. And we used it to its fullest extent for She Kills Monsters Virtual Realms, but we really ran into some unique challenges in doing that production because what we discovered, and this play is about characters who go on a Dungeons and Dragons game campaign in order to two sisters are trying to reconnect. And so they play this Dungeons and Dragons game in order to reconnect with one another. And the play was originally written as a live play, so you can see it performed live. And in spring 2020, the playwright quickly wrote a new edition of the play that made it was written to be performed on Zoom. And so all the character interactions happen on Zoom, everything that they're doing. And so it is a play that was as cohesive as possible for the time. And so what we discovered was that every actor, and I think there were 13 actors in the production, every actor had to have their own performance space. Right? We could not have actors be in the same space together. So we had actors in unused faculty offices. We had actors in storage closets. We had actors, in costume shops and hallways and scene shops and theater space. Right? We had actors everywhere to try to do this play. They had a green screen curtain behind them where the scenic designer had made different digital backgrounds for them to have on their Zoom, and the student lighting designer created or found a system that allowed students to have lights in their room that the student could adjust the color via an app on their phone, so they could change the color of the lighting. And we had full costumes. And what we discovered was that it's very challenging not only to direct online, because directing is about creating visual compositions that help illustrate character conflict and theme, but we didn't have any way to create visual composition besides how close or how far someone was to their camera.
I see.
And the actor couldn't move necessarily out of their camera frame, and so they had to stay relatively stationary. And we could really only change depth as a way to help tell the story.
Right.
We couldn't really make box order perfect, right? Yes, you can affect box order by who turns their camera on first, but depending on the audience's, any particular audience member's size of their screen, it wasn't necessarily the case that boxes were going to be where we wanted them to be.
Right.
And we discovered that the actors, right, so much about acting is connecting with the person you're talking to, connecting with your acting partner.
I see.
Whether your acting partner is the audience or whether it's someone else on stage with you, so much of acting is connecting with them and reacting together, right? The characters, may be in conflict, and so their actions and reactions help drive the story.
I see.
And what we discovered is that the actors, when they're in their own little space, in order to convey the sense that they were looking at the person they were talking to, they would look directly into their camera, which meant that they weren't really looking at the person they were talking to. It only seemed that way to the audience.
I see.
And because of the way Zoom Webinar works, the audience didn't have the opportunity to turn on their cameras, which was a good thing, or to turn on their microphones. And so the actors weren't getting any feedback return to them from the audience.
Right, because theater is definitely communication between each other and then audience feedback too.
It's a little woo-woo, but you can tell when you're on stage, when you're making a sales presentation, when you're, presenting to a group, are they with you or not?
Right.
Are they bored or not? Are they liking what you're saying or not?
Or are they asleep?
Are they asleep or are they laughing at your jokes? You can tell these things even if the audience is, in a dark theater, you can still get that sense. And so with this show, we weren't able to get that sense, and so the actors, right? The show is technically a comedy. It's got its poignant moments, but it's a comedy. So there was no laughter in response to the jokes, right? There's no applause at the end, and so it's just actors acting into their camera, acting into the void, right? They're acting into the camera dot, and they're just acting into the abyss because they're getting no reaction back. It was really challenging. What'll be interesting over the next couple of decades is to see how online theater develops its own theories and conventions, because it's not really live theater and it's not really film. It's in this very interesting middle area. It's not my favorite. I personally have no interest in returning to online theater at any point.
It sounds difficult.
It really was difficult. We rose to the challenge and we made it work, but I have given the metaphor when I've talked about this show before of, if you're used to running a 5K, well, your body knows how to do that, right? Your body knows how to pace itself and run 5 kilometers and do that thing and be that way. Yeah. And it'd be like if you're running a 5K and you're in the middle of running the 5K and suddenly somebody tells you, well, actually, this is a marathon. And so you technically know how to do the running movement that gets you 26.2 miles, but the training, the mindset, the work that takes is completely different. And so we started the production thinking, well, we can do this, right? Yeah. We know how to run a 5K. We know how to run a 10K. We've done that before. Yeah. Oh, wait, what? It's a marathon? Right. It was just a really a different kind of experience. I also directed online in spring 2021, and I found a play that was a little bit more abstract. Okay. Because it was so abstract, it was a better fit for an online format. I see. That said, we still run into the problem of the actors are talking into a camera dot and can't receive any audience feedback whatsoever. So it's a really interesting field that I think takes the exact right kind of performance to make it work. Because trying to theater did the best it could during that time. Yeah. To try to create performances and to keep itself alive, but. Trying to shoehorn live performance into a video conferencing platform is suboptimal.
Oh, gosh.
Let's say.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, let's see. I know that you were telling me a little bit about theater over Zoom, but in theater in general, I think you were telling me something about there's a thing called technical theater. What is that?
So technical theater is the area of theater that deals with all of the technical aspects of the performance. So it's all the design areas. Okay. It's all of the engineering areas. Oh,
there's engineering areas?
There are absolutely engineering areas in theater. Oh, wow. In lots of different formats. But where we might say, that theater... when we speak about theater generally, we're usually speaking about, acting and directing. We might say theater performance. When we talk about technical theater, we're talking about the design and engineering that goes into making a complete production.
Oh, I see.
A holistic, cohesive production, with scenic design, costume design, lighting design, sound. There might be special effects. There might be projections. That's what technical theater is.
Oh, I see. So it's very important because without that, it would just be people talking on stage that you can't hear with nothing behind them.
Yeah, they're in the dark. There's no set.
There's nothing.
There's nothing, yeah.
So it's very important.
Technical theater is a crucial part of the process, yes.
Oh, I see. So you were mentioning something about engineering in technical theater? Like
Absolutely.
with somebody in an engineering background, math background, physics, could they have a job in the entertainment industry?
Absolutely, absolutely. The great
see.
thing about the entertainment industry is that there's only a couple of places where it seems incredibly competitive, right? If you were to go to the theater industry in New York or the film and television industry in Los Angeles, you would find very competitive marketplaces. But in other places where there is entertainment industry activity in Las Vegas, in Chicago, in Atlanta, you would find very workplaces where people can get jobs reasonably easy compared to Los Angeles and New York, and for a living wage.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, when you think about the engineering aspects of theater, you're not just thinking about the artistic designs that have to occur, that someone draws, someone makes a blueprint of, someone sketches out and paints, but you're also thinking about, okay, now how do these things get constructed?
Oh, I see.
How are we going to construct this set that moves and turns? How are we going to construct these costumes that include LED lights?
Oh, wow.
How are we going to put these lights up in a way that illuminates the space and does what we want? And so those are mechanical engineering jobs. Those are, it's called costume technology, but it's essentially costume engineering. Work. It's electrical engineering when you're talking about lighting design. It's sound engineering and software engineering when you talk about sound design. So there is absolutely a place for engineers to work in the entertainment industry and to be at the top of their field, to be very well compensated for what they do. Absolutely.
Oh, wow. So someone can graduate with a STEM degree and go into arts and entertainment for theater, or I'm guessing for film and stuff as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And one of the great things about Huntsville is that here in Huntsville, the Von Braun Center, our main performing arts center, works under a union contract.
Oh,
and
do tell, what's a union contract?
So a union, right, our organized labor, and the union contract allows, right, it requires a specific wage and benefits, to the folks who work in the union. And when you have, especially in the entertainment industry, whether you're an actor, whether you're a designer or technician, when you have that union membership, you are able to receive higher wages, job protections, benefits like health insurance or retirement fund, those kind of things. And it just, right, it helps kind of bolster the industry. And here in Huntsville at the Von Braun Center, right, if you are a part of their, as shows come into tour, if you help unload or build the set, or if you help with the costumes, you accrue, union points that you're able to use to join the local union here, and that membership transfers.
Oh, that's very nice.
So you can build up your union credits here and then move to New York or Atlanta or Los Angeles or Chicago or Vancouver, Canada, Toronto, Canada, where they film a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And you can have that union membership transfer as a technician, as an engineer, and you're already ahead of the game in terms of the job protections and the wages that you're able to qualify for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a huge deal.
So basically you can kind of do some volunteer hours at first. Is that what it is at
you
first?
Get paid. You get paid at the Von Braun Center. Oh, yeah.
Oh, so basically you get paid to like help out, and then each performance or whatever that it is, you get points. Oh, I see. So how many points is it to... Oh, I don't know.
Gosh, that's a great question.
Okay, we will have to look that up then. Yes, we'll look that up.
As an actor director, I'm not a part of that union. I don't have that process off the top of my head. But
we can either have a picture of it or link it in the comments or something if you are interested.
Absolutely. And so what a lot of our theater students do is they work for the Von Braun Center, for these different touring shows that come in. And we have students graduate with union membership that they're able to take with them, wherever they go across the country. It's a really valuable part of what Huntsville has to offer and what UAH Theater has to offer. And folks who have engineering degrees, folks who are pursuing engineering right now in different aspects, whether it's mechanical, electrical, right? If you're, if you love geometry and sewing, you can absolutely be, a costume designer, a costume technologist. They make great money.
Yeah.
And you can find your way into the entertainment industry. There are conferences across the country. SETC, the Southeastern Theater Conference, is the biggest theater conference in our region. It happens annually. And they have a job fair where you can go and you can interview with theater companies, with cruise company, right? Cruise ships are there. Somebody has to build the set on the cruise ship. Somebody has to, install the lights and rig the lights and design the lights on the cruise ship.
Yeah.
Somebody has to engineer those aspects of the performances on cruise ships. And so so you can go and interview, and they with the right level of experience, those companies are, they're there to hire people.
Yeah.
They're not there just taking resumes to stick into a file.
Yeah.
They need people. And it could be, it could be a year-long contract. It could be a summer contract, right? Depends on the company. But there are absolutely places where getting your foot in the door is as easy as going to that annual conference with, and signing up for the job fair and coming in with your resume ready to really go gangbusters on the job fair.
Yeah. Well, speaking of resumes, so how exactly does a, technical theater resume, say that you are someone with a degree in engineering specifically, or in mathematics or physics or whatnot, didn't graduate with a theater degree, I guess what does that resume need to look like? Because I'm guessing that people that have been in theater and have, technical theater degree, they already have the productions that they have listed of, I was a lighting designer or I was a scenic designer. So I guess what sort of things can be applicable on a resume for that?
So I think for non-entertainment folks coming into the entertainment industry, you want to make those equivalencies for employers. So
I see.
If you've worked on research projects where you have, constructed, right, it's all those active verbs, right? So if you've constructed the thing, if you've designed the thing, if you have, maintained, right, all of those research projects where you can talk about, I have built this, I have tested this, I have, revise this, right? Here's what happened, right? Talking about those research projects is that relevant experience that an employer wants to see, where sure, you maybe didn't build the set for, the spring musical, but you have constructed a thing, you have done, right, things with electrical engineering where that information, right, that knowledge is a one-to-one crossover, and it's just a matter of teaching you, right, about the theater industry specifics. But but if you've got that general knowledge, then just like you would with any work resume, you'd make those equivalencies for theater, entertainment industry employees, so they can make the connection and say, oh, okay, I see how that connects. And then that would, that could be in your cover letter, that could be in your interview, where you could say something like, yes, I'm a mechanical engineering major, but let me tell you why I'm interested in, building sets for, major concert tours, right? That's mechanical engineering. Those, right, those sets, there's multiple Beyonce sets, there's multiple Taylor Swift sets. They have to be able to be, built, taken apart, put on trucks, traveled, built, taken apart, put on trucks, traveled, and so that engineering has to come from somewhere. And so talking about those engineering equivalencies that helps the employer say, oh yeah, I see that you understand how these things work, right? You may not have worked specifically with, a specific kind of sound engineering software, but if you have the software engineering experience that lead you to talk about your coding skills that allow you to connect to, right, how the sound how sound works through space, and that's something that's a an experiment that you worked on, a research project that you worked on, those equivalencies make sense to employers. They're not looking necessarily for, and that's one of the really interesting things about the entertainment industry is degrees are super helpful. They're great. You get that necessary training to help you really get your foot into the door into the job market. But at a certain point in the entertainment industry, it doesn't matter what your degree is, it matters what your knowledge is.
Oh, I see.
And so even if your degree is in, advanced math, there's still a way to turn that into an incredibly precise costume technician degree, costume technologist degree, costume technologist job that allows you to really be at the top of your field.
Oh, that's so cool. Let's see. So is the job like market and stuff for technical theater? Is that, I know that you were saying in some areas it's a little bit more bit of competition, but there's still several jobs out there. I know that with like acting careers and stuff, it's very much, like super competitive and whatnot, but how is it in regards to technical theater?
Well, so even in both fields, right? In performance and in technical theater, we can talk about how the market is relatively saturated in Los Angeles and New York, and it's about your networking and it's about who you know and kind of the things that you've built up before you get to those places. But in secondary markets, which are every market outside of New York and Los Angeles, there's plenty of work because so much is happening, right? In Atlanta, there's so much film and television and theater happening. In Chicago, there's so much film and television and theater happening. Right? It kind of pick your major city. Surprisingly, someplace like the Washington, D.C. and Richmond, Virginia area. There's a lot of film and television that happens there because a lot of TV shows take place in and around Washington, D.C. And so they'll film in Washington, D.C., but then they'll also film in Richmond, Virginia, which is a very historic city about an hour and a half, 2 hours south. And so you find these locations where there are these markets that are really open to jobs and that they haven't yet saturated. Atlanta is not saturated yet. Atlanta is still a market where you can go and you can be a part of these cities and the work that they're doing.
Oh, I see. Well, that's great to hear that there's still some opportunities available and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So if someone who is currently getting a degree in STEM and they realize that they kind of want to go on that path of entertainment industry, what sort of steps could they take now to ensure a career path? I know we, of course, talked about getting involved in a union, the digital connections like LinkedIn. Is that really helpful?
LinkedIn is not really a resource that the entertainment industry uses as a go-to. I think it's really about making the personal connections, and so finding a way to get to these regional conferences that happen around the country. That's really the best step you can take because especially the theater world is very big on the outside but very small on the inside.
Oh, I see.
And so once you're able to start making connections, you're able to, get introductions. You work one place and you can be recommended for another place, right? It's this, it's the same thing a lot of other places, but it's getting there in person. And so it's really working in person because so much of what we do, because it can't be remote, is about the interpersonal connection.
Oh,
and so you've got to be there in person to show work ethic, to show interest, to show your skills, and that takes in person work. So finding the opportunities, in your community, whether it's the Von Braun Center, finding the local the conference to go to, the regional conference. There's lots of entertainment industry organizations out there. USITT is one, SATC is one, where they have these regional conferences and these national conferences where you can go and you can network and you can make those connections. And that's really the best way. That's the best way in.
Oh, I see. Well, that's very good to know. So let's see. Do you even have to have a degree to get into technical theater? I know that you were mentioning that, someone with a engineering degree can get a job, but is a degree necessarily required? or is it more about the experience, like in regards to like costuming or something?
Right. So, a theater degree is really helpful because the employer knows that you have the training necessary to kind of do the work, and they don't always have to train you themselves. But that said, if you have a lot of hands-on experience in mechanical engineering, in electrical engineering, in software engineering, that's gonna get you a conversation. That's gonna get you that opening that you can use to highlight what you can bring to that organization and how you can help them move forward.
Yeah. So let's kind of steer the conversation kind of towards entrepreneurship and innovation. So if somebody has a like entrepreneurial idea for technical theater, how can they start that, I guess? Because is theater, well, let me first ask you is technical theater or just theater in general a place of entrepreneurship?
That's a complicated question. So yes, it is, because new theater companies start all the time, and people have new ideas all the time.
Yeah.
What we don't have is a strong funding mechanism for really valuing entertainment industry entrepreneurship.
Oh, I see.
In the same way that we really value technical industry entrepreneurship, where, if you have an idea, if you can pitch, you've got a product, you've got a thing that can sell, that create return on investment for your shareholders.
Yeah.
You can receive funding to pursue that idea. And in the arts, we don't really have that kind of a mechanism. It's very difficult to come at any kind of a granting organization and say, I have this idea and it will do this, as a community service, potentially even as a return on investment for its shareholders. There's not really a mechanism for funding artistic entrepreneurship. A lot of artistic grants require that you be incorporated as a 501c3, which is a nonprofit organization, and that you have been doing work for a set number of years that's your proof of concept, to show that you're worth giving money to.
Right.
And so that makes it possible, but not easy to begin artistic entrepreneurship. Most artistic entrepreneurship ideas, the seed funding has to come from you.
Oh, I see.
That's where it has to come from first, and from that, after several years, after kind of consistent product that you've put out, whether it be production or a specific widget, then you can start to qualify for grants at an artistic level. But until then, it is very challenging, and that's a really interesting market opening to provide funding, to provide the infrastructure and the funding that is sustainable to generate artistic entrepreneurship, because the ideas are out there, absolutely.
Yeah.
But how that gets turned into reality is a lot different than the business world, and it's very, very challenging.
Oh, I see. And same thing in a way with technical theater as well. Oh, I see.
I would say even more challenging.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Let's see. How do you think that theater can become more innovative?
Oh, gosh.
I know that's a deep one.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Spark Notes version.
Yeah. So so when we're talking about STEAM, we'll kind of keep it to that path. I think what theater has to bring to the table is that we have really interesting artistic questions to answer, and sometimes we need the STEM mind to help take on the challenge of answering this artistic problem.
Oh.
How do we take the STEM mind and have it work to figure out the answer to this artistic problem? And I think if we can think about ways to ways to continually kind of push technology forward so that it isn't the gimmick of the thing, right? We don't do shows full of technology just to be gimmicky, ooh.
Right.
But how do we use technology to help make connection, to help tell the story? How is it used best to foster that sense of connection and community? That's and the how does the field continue to push itself forward and have practitioners in the field that want that forward movement versus saying, well, like, no, this is the way I learned how to do it, and so this is how I'm going to do it, and this is how I do it.
Yeah.
How do we make it possible to continue to learn, to continue to be current in that field, and then to bring that learning back to your arts organization, your university program? How do we foster that sense of always forward, never back?
Oh, I see. So STEM is definitely, or STEAM is definitely a key part of theater in general, just because it, utilizes the STEM mind, like you were saying, to create or to solve an artistic problem.
Absolutely.
So that's perfect then for this podcast then.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. One more question. What do you think the next steps of theater are in regards to like combining with STEM, like artificial intelligence, virtual reality, like immersive projection, robotics as actors with speaking lines?
Yeah, so all those things. Some of the next big challenges we've got, I think, are incorporating the idea of virtual reality, right?
Yeah.
How do we incorporate that into a production that maybe the audience can also see? Are we all in the virtual production together, right?
Yeah.
Does everyone in the audience wearing a virtual reality headset? Are the actors also, right? How do we create that kind of a world and that kind of a production?
Yeah.
When we talk about robots, are we talking about, robots playing not just kind of very side characters like, your tea's ready, ma'am. But, how do we make them a secondary or a main character? And, are there lines on a timer? And so, right, the human actor they're working with has to always kind of keep to a specific time rhythm.
Right, it's going without you.
They're going to say the next line whether you do or don't. If there's a mistake, how does the robot manage that mistake? Because there's small mistakes happen all the time in productions.
Yeah.
How is the robot memorizing lines? Are they working on just a recording model, or are we starting to get into like an AI model where they can have a sense of what's coming next and be willing to kind of work and flow with the human actor that they're working with? Those are really big questions to answer and to experiment with. And then also the idea of using AI in a production. What does that look like? How does that generate text for a production that might include some improvisation or some audience interaction that includes AI generated text or AI generated images? How do those things work together? We haven't yet really seen productions that fold in AI as an active part of the production process. I think those are really interesting thresholds that we're going to start to bump up against here in the next, 6 months, year.
Oh, gosh.
Right, not that long at all.
Yeah.
We're going to start to see people playing with this tool and trying to figure out how to use it and how to fold it into live theater productions.
Yeah, I mean, heck, even, like holograms or something too, instead of using Zoom. That may be more helpful in trying to see the audience's reaction as a hologram and whatnot.
It could be.
Yeah, and like 3D printing set pieces and stuff too.
We already 3D print set pieces and props on a pretty regular basis. The theater industry does that.
Oh, wow.
Because some things, right, that you need to custom make or custom machine, using a 3D printer is just the best way. It's just the best way to do that. So that's been around since 3D printers really came into wide use. Technicians and designers have been experimenting with using 3D printed pieces within theater. But But yeah, holograms, that's really interesting. Immersive projections, how do we create community and connection where the technology serves that end rather than us serving the technology?
Oh, I see. Well, those are all really great sort of aspects of the future of theater. And
absolutely.
Especially like you were saying, in just the next 6 months, too. That's going to be super exciting. And hopefully we'll start seeing that super soon. Yeah. And well, that's all the questions that I have. Do you have anything else that you would like to add or anything? Or
UAH Theater is always producing, and we're always looking for people to get involved. So, please check us out at uah.edu/theater.
Yeah, and if they have any questions for you in regards to getting involved in either UAH Theater or just any sort of aspect of theater, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, our website, uah.edu/theater, has a faculty page where my information is there, and absolutely feel free to reach out via email. That's the best way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Professor Guerin, for your time. And
thank you.
We're so excited that you're our first podcast guest for A Girl's Guide to STEAM.
I'm so happy to be here.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.